Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this third full meeting of the Community Task Force on Policing for the City of Elgin, Illinois. I'm Larry Schooler from Kearns and West, a member of the facilitation team for the task force, and I continue to be very honored to be part of your work here together. And we will be getting this robust meeting discussion underway in just a moment. If anybody's having any challenges with connecting on Zoom, we have some staff here, including Sheila Brown and Cameron Hendrickson, who may be able to assist you with any kind of connectivity issues. We know that it can be a challenge to be heard and seen, but we're glad everybody has joined us, and we look forward to a really productive meeting with you tonight as we continue to make progress on the important tasks given to us by the Elgin City Council. I'm going to turn things over to my colleague Norma Ramos, who's going to walk us through our plan for the evening.
All right, Larry, thank you. I'm just going to walk you all through the agenda so that we sort of just have an idea of how tonight's task force meeting will flow. So we'll start with Larry calling to order the meeting, doing an agenda review. We will also review the meeting notes and summary minutes and then approve the minutes from task force meeting number 2. Then we also will open it up for public comment. We will review the Illinois Open Meetings Act. We'll discuss communication from the public to the task force as well. We will also start talking about the framework for task force to use discussing topics and deliberating on recommendations. We will then also select a chair, vice chair, and a spokesperson tonight, and then we'll have a quick break, and then we're going to get to work. So then we're going to start talking about police accountability, and then we will we have some pieces outlined here in that agenda, and then we're going to talk about what we want to talk about on the next task force meeting, thinking about topics, other key items we need to include on that, and any questions or information we might be able to help support as well. And then we'll wrap it up at about 8 p.m. And yeah, so that's just a quick update on our agenda. Discussion agreements are outlined here. Larry, I can't remember if we've gone over them, or do we just take a few minutes to take a look at them again? I think
I think we've all, it's mainly for those who are joining us for the first time, just to know kind of the dynamic we're trying to create here, a brave space for everyone to feel comfortable sharing.
Yeah, definitely. So we have discussion agreements, speak for yourself about what has heart and meaning, honor the agenda or modify by agreement, learn from and understand each other's perspective, be respectful, candid, and constructive, provide balance of speaking time, test assumptions by asking questions, explore innovative solutions based upon common interests, strive to resolve differences, and seek common ground. We will also discuss topics together rather than in isolation, and then limit side conversations and actively participate. These are the discussion agreements we've agreed to as the task force meeting has been held. This is our 3rd meeting today, so we just want to share that out loud for those of you who are watching on live on YouTube and also might just have it in the background. All right, so let's get updated on the review and meeting summary and minutes. So we began the meeting at approximately 6 p.m. The task force members supported an update, discussion agreements, and suggestions were presented as well. The task force meeting did not receive any public comment within the chambers or via email in our last task force meeting. Facilitators presented the process and approach of Spanish interpretation translation for task force meetings. We didn't have any formal action taken, so as of right now, regular task force meetings will be translated into Spanish after completion and posted on the task force website. Community input meetings will have interpreters on site providing simultaneously interpretation in Spanish and possibly other languages, which we'll probably talk about as well today. Facilitators presented the outcomes, including media and community discussions and emails sent by citizen to the task force, which was shared at the end of task force meeting held on September 30th. And Chief Lally presented a statement which included the review of the incident and findings on behalf of the Elgin Police Department to the task force. The task force discussed how to manage future communications from the public, and no formal action was taken. The facilitation team did relay future communications from the public to the task force with information redacted as needed, email addresses and names, and etc. Let's see. that we then went into presenting 4 options in conversation and decision in terms of structural models. The task force members discussed which model would work best. The task force members presented 4 models, which included a chair/vice chair, which is permanent, and agenda prep will be the voice of the task force for media, council, and et cetera. Facilitators will work with the task force on what to say to the media, compliance with ordinance procedures to call to order. The second model presented includes a chair and a vice chair, which is rotating. That outlines same tasks, responsibilities, but workload would be rotated within task force members. Model 3 was no chair, vice chair. Task force members will provide input on agendas during prior meetings. Facilitators will also help guide task force members in their discussion. Task force members will decide how to respond to media inquiries. The fourth model that was presented was core or coordinating team. And that's clear, and some clarification was made that there would be less than 5 or less task force members, sorry, that sentence was weird to me, serve as a rotating spokesperson to the task force, rotate roll call meetings and adjournment. What was decided at the meeting was that task force members agreed via consensus to model task force member Cordova's recommendation moving forward. The task force will select a chair, co-chair, and spokesperson, which we'll do today, who will serve in those roles for the next few months, which at that time, the task force can then determine whether those individuals can continue to serve or if they would like to continue or whether new members should be chosen to fill those roles. Then we moved into the next item on the agenda was facilitators presented the topic prioritized in the task force meeting 1 and those to discuss additional ways to support informational needs to address those topics. 1 was ensure and improve accountability for Elgin Police Department. The second was consistency of the Elgin Police Department's use of force policies with best practice. And the third topic that was also prioritized was evaluating current Elgin Police Department training. The task force members agreed via consensus to discuss the topic accountability. Then we discussed various levels of accountability topics and information, and we had no formal action taken. And then we agreed to meet today, Thursday, October 21st from 6 to 8 p.m. Central Time. And then I don't know if you have the last part of it. What time we adjourned the meeting.
I think we adjourned at 8:17. That didn't make it on the slide. Sorry.
That's okay. So those are the meetings, a review of meetings and summary that we put together for you all. And we would like to take a few minutes or a few seconds to approve them, or if there's anything that we should change or update on this document.
Looks like Denise had her hand up.
Okay. Hi, Denise.
Hi, I have a question. Was this summary sent out ahead of time?
No.
Oh.
Okay.
Go ahead, Larry.
So
Yeah, no, it wasn't. That's our being one team member down this week, Denise. I was behind on a bunch of things, and this was one of them. So.
okay.
Yeah, we'll make sure to get those out beforehand so that you all have the opportunity to review them before we start our meeting as well.
Okay, I just thought maybe I missed an email. Thanks.
Yeah, no. Thank you, though. Okay, I think we all approve. Say aye, or just the hands up. I see only a number of folks on my screen.
Looks like we don't have any
No objection?
concerns.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. Thank you all. All right, so right now we would like to open it up to invite any member who is at City Hall or of the public to address the task force members. If anyone is there, they can do so right now.
Hi, this is Chief Lally. We're at City Hall and currently no one is present.
Great, thank you, Chief Lally.
You're welcome.
All right, so let's move on to the next agenda item, which is we've had an opportunity to work with the city members and council members Paul and Shaw to discuss the Illinois Open Meetings Act and kind of put that together for you all. And I'm going to pass this over to, I think, is City Manager Kozel on, I think I heard Rick on the call to do an update.
Hi, Norma. This is Rick Kozel. I'm here speaking under Chief Lally's moniker.
Okay. Can I turn that over to you to kind of just share out loud the Illinois Open Meetings Act?
Certainly. Thank you, Norma. And thank you, task force members, for allowing me to what I want to provide a brief overview of the requirements that we need to follow, because the Task Force on Policing is a public body within the meaning of the Open Meetings Act. And I want to make sure that the communication and deliberations that are occurring between the task force members is always in compliance with the act. The task force members should have received, or it's my understanding, received a 2-page summary, primer, cheat sheet, if you will, on the requirements of the Open Meetings Act. But I want to touch on some of the primary components that typically trip up members of public bodies, highlight those issues so we can avoid any potential problems in the future. But I think a good jumping off point is the kind of the struggle that occurred with the approval of the minutes. It's one of the issues. The approval of minutes is required under the Open Meetings Act, and it's one of the reasons that designating a chairperson, even if it's on a rotating basis, makes it easy to go through the process of fulfilling the Open Meetings Act requirements. The chairperson, it's not a terribly difficult duty. In an effort to kind of demystify what the role of the chairperson is, it's just somebody who is responsible for managing the conduct of the particular meeting. The chairperson simply starts the meeting at the appropriate time and welcomes everyone to the meeting. And then the chairperson would then introduce each item on the agenda and monitor the discussion of those agenda items, encouraging task force members to follow the conventions of the meeting and stick to the agenda without being sidetracked. One of those would include simply approval of the minutes from a previous meeting, and Kearns and West would work with the chairperson to ensure that the minutes are transmitted to the task force members in advance, and it would simply be, in most instances, a pro forma function to approve those meetings. As the meeting begins winding down, I think it's the chairperson's role to work in conjunction with Kearns and West to begin identifying agenda items for the next meeting. And then the final action is simply drawing the meeting to the close at the end. The primary concern with the Open Meetings Act is to limit discussions of task force members outside the meeting notice requirements. What this essentially means is Illinois is one of the most liberal and progressive states when it comes to limiting discussions between board and commission members. And what's important to know is that it's not just speaking to somebody in person or individually that may constitute a violation of the Open Meetings Act. You can violate the Open Meetings Act by engaging in email messages, social media chat, or other electronic communication. The easiest thing I think for the task force members to remember is you can't communicate with more than 4 other task force members about task force business at any one time. So that's you and 4 other task force members. Again, if there's a communication that goes beyond that, whether in a shared text message, an email message, or some type of discussion in a chat room, that technically is a violation of the Open Meetings Act. So I think the safest thing to follow is recognizing that, again, whenever there is an item of concern to the police task force, you can't communicate with more than 4 other task force members about what your concerns are without violating the Open Meetings Act. Kearns and West is taking care of the other provisions of the Open Meetings Act that relate to posting notice requirements of when the meeting is going to occur, publishing an agenda in advance, and taking care of the minutes that need to be approved not later than 30 days after the most previous meeting. I don't want to spend really any more time on these procedural matters, but if there's any particular questions that I may have raised as part of this overview, I'm willing to answer questions. But I think that most of the information that you need is included in that 2-page summary that will be provided, that's been provided to you by Kearns and West.
It would be more accurate to say that is being provided because the PDF you sent me is en route as we speak to the task force.
Fair enough then.
Sorry about that. Task force members, questions about what the manager presented as it relates to the Open Meetings Act? And again, you should have that in your inbox here shortly. Thanks to the city manager very much for teeing that up for us. I think it would also be helpful if we could discuss, and I don't know if Councilmember Powell has joined us yet. I know Councilmember Shaw is here, but we wanted to just discuss ways in which communications from external bodies, whether it be a citizen or just anyone who isn't a task force member, communications to the task force would be addressed. And I see a couple of hands. I'll get to those in 1 second. Councilmember Shaw, I don't know if Councilmember Powell is here yet. Is she here?
I'm here.
Oh.
I'm just not on camera. Can
Yes,
you hear me?
and I should have remembered your first name. I just know you as Councilmember Powell, but yes, I see your iPhone. Before I call on the council members and the manager, I see task force members Haben and Cordova. So Denise first. I'm sorry, can't hear you.
Okay, I just wanted to alert you that Tish Kelhammer is unable to log in. So if you could tell her and help her get in, that would be a marvelous thing. She sent me like 5 messages.
Oh my. Okay. Well, thank you for that alert. And Ismail.
So I just had a quick question regarding clarification. So when we talk about the task force members, because I know Larry, you sent an email regarding communicating with the facilitation team and in violation of the Open Meetings Act, I'm a bit confused. Does that incorporate the facilitation group as well into the number of task force members? So we're not considering 4 of the 18 that were appointed by City Council, that's 4 of the overall group. Correct?
Yeah, we as facilitation team members, Ishmael, are not considered members of the task force. We don't, count as.
Yeah. So can you clarify in your email then? Because you said that we shouldn't be sending an email to the whole facilitation group. It should either be sending to one of you.
Then that was a misstatement on my part. Yeah. So it is perfectly okay if a task force member wants to send an email to, for example, Joe, Korath, Norma Ramos, myself, and Sarah Omar. We also have a new colleague, Cameron Hendrickson, with us tonight. Any of us don't constitute task force members, and so you're not really doing anything to deliberate as a body in a way that's against the act. It's more if you were to email, Aubrey and Shimon and Cynthia and LaJewel and Corey, that you get into issues. So it's just a matter of multiple task force members being on an email and not staff or facilitators and the like.
All right, thanks for that clarification. Yeah, I just wanted to confirm that.
It's very confusing.
I guess I misunderstood your email, so I just wanted to confirm.
No,
at least everybody else.
Absolutely, I'm glad you asked it, and this is something I sometimes have a hard time explaining clearly. So thank you. Okay, so Council Members Powell and Shaw and Manager Kozel, just wanted to ask if you would be willing to share a little bit about how you were thinking to handle external communications to the task force, if that's okay.
Sure. Thank you, Larry. This is Councilwoman Powell. Unfortunately, I was unable to make the last meeting, so I'm glad I'm able to be here today. What I've seen lately, we've had a couple of communications to the task force via email that have kind of sidetracked us from, I think, our mission in terms of the emails regarding alleging police misconduct. And while obviously we are a police task force and we are talking about issues related to this, the city does have a current process on how to address citizen complaints. There's a way that people should be filing those complaints, and I would just prefer that when we get complaints like that or allegations of misconduct, that we send them through our existing process, because that is something that does exist. Now, it is completely, within the task force's charge that we can and perhaps should be looking at that process at some point during our discussion to see if there are things that need to be improved upon in that process or changed or completely overhauled. But as it stands right now, I think we should be sending those types of emails or communications through that process and bringing that back to the task force once it's been investigated and there's some kind of explanation, closure, or just what has happened as part of that investigation, what has been found. That should be obviously shared with the task force, since the initial email may have come through the task force. But I just kind of throw that out there because I don't want us spending a lot of time on these issues moving forward. I know, everyone's time is valuable. I've already heard complaints from people that, hey, this really is outside of our purview because we don't have any power to deal with these. And that's absolutely true. And that's really not part of our charge. So if the task force members are okay with that, I would just, propose that that's how we move forward with these types of issues when they come forward, in the future.
Before I call on Task Force Member Brockway, I see, or I wanted to just check with Councilmember Shaw or the manager if they wanted to add anything.
No, nothing further related for me to add. Just I think the idea was just trying to focus on the task at hand, and I worry that these other areas just may be distracting to the group as a whole. And I think there's so much other content and topics and areas for us to focus on as a group.
Thank you. And Manager Kozel, anything you wanted to add?
No, I concur with both council members, Shaw and Powell. Thank you.
Thanks. Joshua, did you want to chime in?
I appreciate the commentary and the direction of naming the accountability process. Quite frankly, I think the public is confused about what our role is. And with all due respect, I think it's the council, the police department, and the city manager's duty to make public that accountability process and ways to counter into that. I understand that the facilitation team can help direct the emails to where they need to go. But being sidetracked means that this demonstrated that people don't know where to go. So it was a helpful thing to be able to see and hear. I'm not sure it derailed us, but I think it's important for those official entities to help field a lot of those conversations, concerns, and complaints before it comes to the task force itself.
Understood. Thank you for the input. I see Task Force Member Banner. Marcus?
I just want to say on behalf of the city and the city manager and the police chief there, all that stuff is public. And if there's task force members who aren't familiar with all of that stuff, I think they should do a little bit of homework. But it's very public. It's always been very public. It hasn't been hidden. And I've personally been active in, helping facilitate some of those complaints and go through the process. So I just want to say, I think that the misunderstanding came from some of the newspaper articles out there to make people feel like we are the Citizens Review Authority, which we're not. I mean, I think the whole idea of being called a task force is also misleading because it kind of insinuates you have some type of power, which we don't. So, but that's where the confusion comes in at.
Well, and just in extending what Joshua was talking about, and I'll mention this here again in just a moment, we, in cooperation with the city, will be setting up a cloud drive, box.com drive, and that drive will be used for our team and the staff, and frankly, any task force members to basically share information that could be helpful to your deliberations. And so for something like what we're just describing, that could be uploaded easily so that everyone would have access to it and could review it, as they felt it was necessary. Obviously, there will be some documents that we'll reference right in the meeting itself, but there could be other background pieces of information that drive will be useful for. And of course, if anybody has difficulty accessing that, we'll make sure that we make accommodation to get you the documents in some other fashion. So I've got some hands up here. Let's go to Walter.
If a citizen feel like that those procedures that Councilman Powell and Councilman Shaw along with the city manager, if they feel like those procedures not working, I think we're doing a disservice as being a task force. If someone come to us and say that I did those procedures, but they was not effective, and how can we approve, how as we as a task force can prove that, I think though, improve that, I think those are the things that the task force should be doing, shouldn't it?
Yes, sir. Not to take sides here, but I mean, I do believe that your scope of work here, your task includes evaluating how these procedures are working and how effective they are. So I think what I'm hearing as a distinction is if it's a particular complaint, it initially goes through the complaint process. But if it's a concern about that process, that's where you all come in to provide guidance as to how you think the process should be changed and improved. So I think that you're saying what Councilmember Powell is saying and that you're on the same page. Let me go to Joshua and then Ishmael. Oh, I'm sorry, Joshua.
No, that's fine. I just wanted to clarify, given Marcus's comments, I did not say or mean to say that it's the task force that is confused about what information is shared and how it goes. I think it's the public. And I think that goes to his comment too about the newspaper articles and the naming, right? The wider public is not as clear about how to engage this or what our role is. And so I think some of those pieces need to be headed up in other places so that we can do our work.
Understood. Yeah, thanks for that clarification. Ishmael.
So I want to thank everyone for really speaking up again. I feel like it's kind of a bit redundant since we've already talked about a lot of it last week when we talked about the email. I feel like we all kind of clarified where we're falling regarding communications from the public to us and vice versa. I do feel that one, we should really consider our tone in our language when we talk to one another and when we talk about the public. I think that by stating that we have no power and that there's basically saying that our name is misleading or there's nothing going to benefit out of this group is kind of casting a negative cloud over this whole process, and it can be a bit discouraging for everybody. So I do want everyone to take that into consideration when we're moving forward in conversations that are meant to be open and everyone's viewpoints are to be respected. Secondly, I do think that if every individual in our residency knew the processes, they would have sent that email to the proper route into the right avenue. That email was sent to us for a reason. And I think that the one thing that we are going to be considering is how is the complaint process? How is that being seen? I think that should be all in consideration. If we decide to make those complaints go to whatever route the city wants us to go through, that is fine. But one thing that I do want, and I really hope that the city and the council members agree on, is that when we ask for those complaints to be provided to us with no restrictions, if anything, that they will be agreeing in that manner, because obviously that is very important to what we're going to be moving forward with. So those are my two main things, is really let's all be kind and respectful when we talk about one another, and especially the residents of our city, and really take into consideration that this is a collaborative effort between us and the city and the police department. Thank you.
Thanks, Ishmael. Appreciate the points. Denise.
I'm reporting that Penny Williams is having difficulty.
It's our town crier here helping us. Yeah, we are doing our best to have staff. I know Tish was having difficulty and we got her in, so we'll keep working. There's Penny. I see.
Yeah, I'm here. I just got in.
All right, Penny, glad you're here. Appreciate also everybody being those who can being on video. It definitely helps for a conversation as meaningful as this to have folks be able to see each other. So I know that's not always possible and there's internet issues and so on, but we'd love to see as many of you as we can. So I think that at this point we are probably ready to continue with the agenda unless anybody else wanted to contribute anything. Marcus?
I just want to say again, the reason I say we have no power is because that's the reality. And because of the miscommunication to the public, Ishmael, the public must know exactly what this is. We are a group of people, a group of citizens having honest conversations about some hard topics in hopes that we can make some recommendations. Recommendations are not power. Because if people think that we actually have the power to make the choices and about the things that we're talking about, that's misleading to them. So I will continue to say at every opportunity that I get that we have no power. We have no power of the pen.
Marcus, with all due respect, I did not address you, so please do not address me. I was referring to the entire task force because that's not the first time that that comment has been made. I'm just necessarily just speaking that we are all adults. We should know how to behave at a table, and we should all really take this with respect to one another. That's all.
So I just want to acknowledge both Marcus and Ishmael are obviously bringing up something that's very important to both of them, and I'm sure it's important to everybody, which is we want our participation in these meetings to matter. And I think that how it matters may be somewhat in the eye of the beholder, but I know, and I'm sure Councilmember Powell and Shaw could speak to this, that they view this task force as, of course, providing recommendations, but doing so on the basis of very reasoned and intelligent deliberation and a deep dive into the issues based not just on research and data, but on your expertise and your lived experience and your community connections. And so I don't think that they necessarily interpret the notion of power as simply being, statutory or political in that sense. I think they view it as a more complex concept. And I'll just pause there to see if Councilmember Powell and Shaw want to add anything briefly to this discussion before we move on.
I guess I would just say maybe the power is in the idea. If you have a good idea, it's going to have life behind it. I think that the group will come behind it with consensus, and I think that's where I guess I would ask for that. That's where that recommendation comes from. The idea to recommend has the power to make a change in the future.
And if I can add, this
Sure.
is Councilwoman Powell. I've been very vocal on this topic for a long time, and a lot of the folks that are here on this task force have been very vocal over the years, and I think it was very intentional when we put this task force together that we include a lot of those folks as well as people that are new to the conversation. I think that's the beauty of the group that we have here. But I definitely understand where both Ishmael and Marcus are coming from. What I will say is, as a council member, and I can't speak for the entire council, but I do believe that the majority of the city council is very interested. In what recommendations come from this group. Otherwise, we would not have put this group together. I'm not about wasting people's time. I know that everyone has jobs and families and all sorts of things that you could be doing on these Thursdays when we're meeting. But this is serious work, and I think all of you are here to actually get some serious work accomplished and make some solid recommendations to our council, myself included, that we're gonna have to make some tough decisions based on what those recommendations are from this task force. So I hope that you all believe that you do have some say and power. One of the things that I know the city of Elgin, we pride ourselves with community engagement and really engaging with our community and listening to feedback from our community. This is where we put our money where our mouth is, as far as I'm concerned. And whether or not we're actually going to listen and move forward with, some, reasonable things that come out of, the recommendations that come out of this task force. Am I going to say everything is recommended will be passed? Probably not. That's just based on what I've seen in, things that we've done in the past and things outside of the city. But do I think that it will be taken seriously? Absolutely.
Yeah, I'll just quickly add, and then I'm going to move us forward. I've had the privilege to work with a number of groups like this who had an advisory role and a recommendations role. When consensus is reached, that has an enormous amount of political power over the folks who ultimately may be charged with implementing those recommendations, because you all come from a number of different walks of life and perspectives. And so if we're able to reach consensus on a particular item, I think the council will take very serious consideration of that. Lastly, I just want to mention the significance of what Ishmael was saying. Let's be sure that as we address one another, we do so in a way that makes folks feel heard and focuses on the substance rather than the individual. I think it's very important for everyone to feel like they can express their point of view freely and openly. So appreciate the comments there. All right, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to turn us briefly to just an overview of a process by which we intend to take up the topics that are the substantive matters for this task force, and this shouldn't take too long. This slide is mostly one that we've used before, but I've made some additions to it and want to walk through those very briefly. Our intention as it relates to taking up a topic like accountability or training or any of those is that we begin by understanding what the task force thinks when they hear that word or that topic, and what direct lived experience do you have associated with that topic, or what have you heard from the community or your friends and neighbors or your family about that topic. So to start the discussion from a place of story and direct experience. From there, after we've sort of ascertained what that particular idea means to you, we then want to know what, if any, information you'd like to have from Elgin Police Department and or from other departments around the United States or other bodies of policing. We are fortunate to have on our team a number of folks who have worked with lots and lots of departments around the country, and so we're able to draw upon some of that research, but we're not intending to do some lengthy presentation to you all or workshop on a particular topic unless it's directly requested. So the task force would begin by laying out some of their thoughts on the matter, and my intention, and Joe and I will probably discuss this on the break, but my hope tonight is that we give each person at least a bit of time at the beginning to share some initial thoughts, and then we can have an open discussion, but get everyone's thoughts on kind of what the topic means to them, what they're hoping to glean. Then find out what you'd like to know about the Elgin Police Department's involvement in that particular area and what you'd like to know about any other departments. Then we bring that information back to you, and you can ask questions, of course, of EPD or of any experts that we bring from outside. And then, of course, if we felt it was beneficial, a subcommittee could be formed to dive into the topic even more deeply. We don't have any particular bias one way or the other as it relates to subcommittees. It may be helpful if there's a group of folks who feel particularly passionately about a topic and who want to dive more deeply than they feel there is time for in the full task force to set up a subcommittee, but we'll see how that goes. But the subcommittee could have an even more in-depth conversation. That would, of course, also connect to a desire to reach the community and hear from the community and public as to what they think of the topic that you all are discussing. And that community engagement will likely take a number of different forms, including public events, as well as ways for people to contribute electronically. After we've collected the input, we would then bring all of that back to the task force for dialogue, deliberation, consensus, and or a vote on some recommendations you'd like to make. And as I said at the beginning of our process, that would go immediately to the city council and the police department. We don't intend to wait until a final report is ready towards the end of the spring to give them information from you all. We want them to have it as soon as you all have come to consensus on it. So that's the way that we were envisioning working through topics with you, but it is a recommendation from us, a suggestion. And so we'd like to hear any feedback you have on this process, anything you think we ought to reconsider at this point.
You asking for task force members to ask to deal with that, Larry?
Yes, sir, Walter. Just any comments or feedback that task force members have.
Yeah, one of the things I like to see is the city managers there. I like to see what is his policy on policing. Have he written a policy on policing, and what is his policy on that?
Okay. We will, he's here, so I'm sure he's made note of that, and we'll make sure that his policy, to the extent that there is policy separate from the department, is incorporated into the discussion.
Well, if you got your top executive, on board with policing and what his view of philosophy is on policing, that's what I would like to know, because that does matter.
Yes, sir.
It's just not a department, but it's one of the departments that is your front line, your first responders.
Mm-hmm.
So I would really like to know that. Thank you.
You're welcome. Marcus?
So my question would be, it says request any info from the Elgin Police Department. I know there's been times I've requested some information for purpose of looking into some things through the FOIA process and been denied. Will we be able to make some special requests to look into some procedural things, maybe some body cam from specific incidents and things of that nature?
Well, Chief Lawley's here, so I'd just assume if she is open to it, maybe having her speak to it. But I know that Chief Lally wants to provide the task force with the information that they need to be able to understand how the police department does things now on the topics that you all are going to take up. Chief, if you're there and are open to responding, it'd be great to hear your take.
Yeah, and I just want to also add that the request is based on looking at the culture of certain things that police officers do during certain traffic stops is what I would like to look into to address.
Okay.
Yes, I'm here. We can figure out, yes, specifically what it is that you're looking for. And then, depending on privacy and there's a way to get the information to the group, but still maintain the privacy and based on FOIA laws. But it just depends what you guys are looking for. But absolutely, I can facilitate getting that information to you guys so that, even if it's me giving a review, if we're able to redact certain things so that you guys, are able to see things and hear things, just let me know what it is that you're looking for, and I can find a way to facilitate it.
For body camera from all of the traffic stops that bring out the Canine unit and the procedure that they use and to watch them in action as they use the canines.
Okay, so that's what you're specific, just interested in the canine traffic stops?
Yes, anytime they call the canines to the traffic stops, the way they use the dog to signify a hit. And then so we can look into how many times the dog gives a hit and then they still find no drugs.
Okay. Let me work on it, and I'll have to, obviously there's, some guidelines, specifically the body worn camera law. So there's some law stuff that we have to work through, but I can work with our legal department, figure out how we can get you what you're looking for, what you're trying to analyze. But again, being mindful of privacy and things like that, but I'll work on it. I understand what you're trying to get at.
And Chief, thank you. And Marcus, thank you for the specific request. And I'm going to call on Tish here in just a minute, but I want to just procedurally suggest that we kind of conclude the discussion on this process and then make sure we get one other process item done, our leadership discussion, and then we can move directly into the substantive and get to some other information requests. So just as a process heads up. Tish.
Thank you. I apologize for my late entry into this meeting. I think there's a very, very strong pull towards deliberating and deciding upon creating a citizens review board on policing, which is, I think, different from this body. So I respectfully suggest if there's anything that needs to be discussed regarding specific police procedures or duties, such as reviewing body cam footage, et cetera, that really should be done by a citizens review board. And maybe we need to perhaps set up a subcommittee right away to look into that. And maybe that's one of the recommendations that we make right away, sooner rather than later. And then we can proceed with some of the other things that we're interested in, such as training, accountability, et cetera, et cetera. That's my perception. I don't know what you all think, but perhaps that's a direction that we can take. Not during these meetings. Again, a subcommittee can deal with that, and let's get that going.
So
I think there's interest and motivation for it.
So I know we've captured that in the notes, and let's circle back before the end of this meeting and determine whether the body would like to go ahead and set a subcommittee up as you just described. I think that could be a great next step to just flesh out that discussion and formulate a recommendation for this body. So that makes a lot of sense. So just don't let me forget. I promise we'll get back to it. Denise.
So I was going to, I'm concurring with Tish about the Citizens Review Board. If we create a subcommittee, I know that some of the members on this task force have been working diligently for the last year or maybe more on that very topic. And so I think this is very timely, and it's something that we can do now and not wait. So that's all.
Yeah, appreciate that. And it's great to see some recommendations already coalescing. So as I say, I think the idea of getting a subcommittee in place to prepare a detailed recommendation on that will make a lot of sense. And we'll get to that after we get through a couple of other items on the agenda. We'll circle back to it. Are there any other comments just on our kind of process, our discussion process that we laid out there? All right. Well, thank you all for that. Before we take our break, my hope is that we can discuss the appointment of, or the selection.
Thank you. I just wanted to get some clarification from Marcus. Is there a time frame that because it helps staff to kind of hone in on video, because that could be a pretty large ask. And are you looking for Canine video within the past 12 months? Would that be sufficient to kind of start with? Because I understand what you're asking and definitely why you're asking it. Can we hone in on like a time frame of, would you like it for the past 12 months?
Yeah, I would say to start with the past 12 months, and then also with some specific names, which I won't put out publicly, interactions with certain people.
Okay. Got it. And if you have specific instances that you would like that may or may not fall within that 12-month period, please share that with the facilitation team and we can and staff, and we can make sure that the video that is pulled for what looks like is going to be a subcommittee that's going to look at this, it includes exactly what you're looking for. Thank you for the clarification.
All right. Thanks, Councilmember. Okay, so I want to do a couple of things as we do this important work. And folks, I do believe that this will get us beyond most of the admin type stuff and into the substance right after the break. So bear with us. Well, first, I'd like to recognize Ishmael Cordova, first of all, to compliment him for getting us a structure that won the group over. That's not an easy thing. So well done to you on that. And just wanted to ask before we get into these positions, is there anything you'd like to say about how you envision the roles of chair, vice chair, and spokesperson?
I don't think I have anything specific to add. I really just encourage everybody to really take the opportunity, if they're nominated or if they want to nominate someone that they believe could be a strong leader for our group, to do so. I think that everyone has their strong value that they can bring to leadership. So I really encourage everyone to take that into consideration.
Very good. And as Manager Kozel said, and I'm certainly happy to hear from him again if he'd like to add anything, the chair and vice chair, I think, would, make sure that the meeting is called to order, that agenda items are taken in turn, they also would work with us on just kind of consolidating the various interests of the task force into the next agenda. As we put future agendas together, we would seek their input as we go. And then the spokesperson would obviously be offering comments to the extent that they were requested of the task force as a whole, but nothing that the spokesperson does is meant to preclude any individual task force member from speaking. It's just a way for the task force to be given an official voice, but it doesn't mean that any task force member is prohibited from making comments on her or his own behalf. Ishmael, does that sound right in terms of your perception? Okay, great. All right, so as a process matter, what I'm hoping we will do is take nominations either of oneself or of someone else for each role. We'll start with chair and go through it. So we'll take nominations. We'll let those who accept the nomination give us some brief comments as to why they'd like to serve. We'll then take a vote, and the vote needs to be, it can't be anonymous. It has to be kind of a show of hands. We're, I think, okay to just do a plurality. We don't need a full majority, with runoffs or anything like that. So whoever gets the most votes would be selected for the role that they were nominated for. And so we'll do that as the procedure for each of the three roles. So we will take nominations for the position of chair at this point. Task Force Member Rivera. Cynthia, go ahead.
Hello, I'd like to nominate Ishmael Cordova for chair.
All right. Ishmael, would you accept the nomination?
I accept. Thank you, Cynthia.
Okay. So we've got one nominee. Ishmael, I apologize. I don't know right off the top of my head how to get the accent mark. I'll work on that later. Oops. Let's see. I see Carol. Go ahead.
I'd like to nominate Denise Haben.
And Denise, would you accept that nomination?
I think so.
All right.
Yes. Okay.
Thanks, Carol. Marcus, and then Kevin.
I'd like to nominate Larry Schooler.
you
money over there to do the job already.
Well, I'm sorry to laugh so hard, folks. Caught me off guard there. Must be why he's the people's champ. Yeah, we are ineligible players downfield, as they say. It's very nice of you to say that, but we aren't able to serve as chair. But thank you, Kevin.
Hi, I just wanted to ask for the opportunity to talk to everybody on this board. I would like to nominate myself and have the time to be able to, again, talk to everyone. Thank you.
You certainly may. Yes, sir. All right. So we have 3 nominees so far. Are there any others for chair? Yes, Marcus.
I would like to nominate LaJewel Krigler.
And LaJewel, would you accept the nomination? I don't see her.
Sure.
she may or may not have been prepared for such a thing. All right. Very well. Any other nominations?
I actually was thinking Joshua.
Joshua Brockway.
Yes.
Joshua, how do you feel about that? Do you accept?
I'll leave it up to the board. Yeah, I'll accept the nomination and leave it up to the vote. Yeah.
Okay. Good. Thanks, LaJewel and Joshua. Anybody else? Marcus, is that another nomination? I wasn't sure if that was a new hand. Not. Okay. All right. What I'll do is ask, just in the order that I received the nominations, for folks to give us some comments. I don't want to be too much of a taskmaster, but would just ask you to, if you can, keep it to about a minute in the interest of the rest of our agenda. So Ishmael, I'll hear from you first.
This is extremely nerve-wracking, so good luck to everybody else who has to go after me. Hi, everyone. Well, thank you for Cynthia for the nomination for chair. I obviously, we've been 3 minutes 3 meetings in, and so we all don't know each other that well just yet. But I think that the role of the chair and the vice chair and the spokesperson has to be held by someone that is very strong and that's going to be holding the group objectively and positively. I think that throughout the last 2 meetings, I've been speaking in an objective nature, and then I've been kind of promoting the rest of the task members to step aside from their ego and their reputation, but also to come to this task force objectively. I'm stuttering, as you can tell. I'm extremely nervous. I'm sorry. But I think that if you pick me as your chair, I obviously will work tirelessly to feel like all of our voices are heard and that we all feel valued, and that we walk away from this task force feeling like we left our city in a better place than we found it, obviously. So ultimately, you know, I think that you guys should all pick someone that you believe will do the group best. And if you don't like me, you can, you know, we can get rid of me in 4 months, which was the reason we were doing that recommendation in, right? I think that ultimately it should be the group's decision on how we go about this task force. And I really hope that you guys pick whoever you feel the most comfortable with. Thank you.
For someone who was nervous, that was very well done. So thank you. We will move next to Denise Haben.
Okay, well, thank you, Carol, for nominating me, I think. I'm interested in chairing this task force. My experience in the community and in different civic groups is extensive. I've served as the chair of the Elgin Human Relations Commission. I've served as the chair for the Dr. King celebration. I have managed multiple projects. I've herded cats, which I think some of this is going to be like. I'm very much a process person. As Ishmael said this much more eloquently, but I'm going to kind of parrot him. I believe I can make space safe so that everyone can get heard, as well as moving the work forward. We have a lot of work to do, and I think it's very important that we get to step in to get the work done. In addition, I've been knowledgeable and I have worked in various capacities with our Elgin Police Department and a number of different groups, and I'm a policy wonk. And so I agree also with Ishmael that I hope everyone votes for whoever you are most comfortable with, and I'd be happy to serve.
Thank you very much, Denise. Kevin is next.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kevin. I just wanted to give out a little bit of background information of who I am and kind of the things that I've been doing lately. So formally, I'm educated in economics and marketing. So I have a published paper under my name. I understand what it looks like to look at data, look at it objectively, kind of as neutral as we could, and process that. I've been doing a little bit of that work with the Elgin Police Department numbers already, and some of the budget stuff and analysis I've been looking at our city. So if I'm given the chance to serve as either a chair or co-chair, I would really love to bring that experience into the table. I believe what takes to be a good leader is vision, responsibility, and action. And I believe that, given with a bunch of the people that I've spoken to this summer in Elgin, some of the movements and organizations that have worked together to kind of take us to the point of where we are now, I believe I can serve the board in all 3 of those aspects. So I would appreciate the opportunity. I'm super nervous right now too. This is like making my heart beat really fast, but thank you for listening to me.
I tell you, if I could contain my nerves and talk as well as Kevin and Ishmael, I'd be in good shape. But thanks, Kevin, very much. And we'll move to LaJewel.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Marcus. I come to the table as an educator. And in being an educator, I believe in wanting to get the best, wanting to get as much information as we can to make the best decisions. I I am not beholden to anyone. I have no connections to anyone. As most of you know, my name is new to you all. It's been a matter of, I guess you kind of say, the stars or myself rising lately because of the fact that I'm able to communicate with people. I'm able to get in there and listen, find the answers, participate to where I'm listening to all parties and ultimately coming to most definitely the best decision, but I'm definitely looking to serve the people. That's what I'm here for. That's why I wanted to be part of the task force, was to actually come in here and serve the people. I don't have all the political background and that type of thing. And being fair enough, I am one of the people. I have my experiences, life experiences. So I think I'm pretty smart to be able to put everything together. So I ask all of you, most definitely, to pick the one that you feel most comfortable with. Again, it was a surprise to be nominated, but I take that with honor. So with that, please know that I would serve and serve all of us with my best, being fair to everyone. Okay. So that's all.
Thank you so much. I think we have more than one educator in this group. I'm an educator. I think Aubrey's at the university, and so it's nice having multiple educators. Joe and Norma are both at the university. Joshua is our last nominee.
Well, maybe I can give the anti-campaign or statement, but I do appreciate LaJules naming me. I mean, let's just say it right, as a white guy, I have 100% different experience with the policing task force. And I think there's a spot for me to sit and listen in this. And so maybe that's the humble background in this. The humble brag maybe is to say, I don't need to be in leadership. I need to be listening and learning as much as anything else. My background is education also, and also church leadership. So I'm used to the facilitating and being on committees and following through that kind of stuff. I mean, those are things that I can do, but I also feel like there's a number of gifted, talented, thoughtful, eloquent persons on the task force that it doesn't have to be me.
Sir, that's all of our nominees. So I will put their names back up on the screen. And what I need to, whoops, sorry about that. Appreciate also all the nominees respecting time limits, if only actual, well, I won't say anything about time limits at the higher levels of government. So what I'll do is I will call each name in turn and would ask you to choose one of the five and indicate either by a show of your physical hand or a Zoom hand, and I'd ask you to keep that up until we have counted the total number. So again, please only choose one of the five and raise either your physical hand or a Zoom hand. And if you have any other difficulty with making your vote known, you can do it orally. I do want to say hello to Sherman Blair. I know he's had a little bit of a difficult time getting into our meetings, and I'm glad he's here. So good to see Task Force Member Blair. Hope he can hear us. All right. So we begin with Ishmael Cordova. Please raise your hand if you'd like to vote for Mr. Cordova. Okay. I counted 2 for the record. We go next to Denise Haben. Votes for Denise by show of hand. 1, 2, 3. Go next to Kevin Joshua by show of hand, and Cynthia, if you don't mind, if folks would lower their hand just so I don't double count. So Kevin Joshua next. 1, 2, 3. I count 3. All right. That takes us to LaJewel Krigler. I think Walter voted for Kevin, so I'm not going to count Walter's hand there. Joshua, 1, 2. Kevin, you're voting for LaJewel? Okay. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 for LaJewel. And Joshua Brockway. LaJewel, I think, is voting for Joshua. Is that right? No, maybe you were trying to vote for yourself. Okay. Votes for Joshua? Well, unless anyone objects, I think our chair for the first few months of the task force will be LaJewel Krigler. We'll move on to vice chair. And let me start by just asking folks who were not, oops, keep doing that. The folks who were nominated for chair and not chosen, Ishmael, Denise, Kevin, and Joshua, would you be open to being added to the vice chair list? Denise is saying yes. Ishmael says yes. Sorry, let me get everybody's video. Kevin, yes. And Joshua? Okay. Anybody else for nominations for vice chair? Marcus?
Charles Horton.
Charles Horton. Charles? I don't see Charles. Is he here? Huh. Have to be present to win, I think. So we'll hold that thought.
Right.
Other
Battles.
Corey Battles. Corey, would you accept the nomination? Will not. Okay, thanks. Thanks for that.
Thank you, Marcus. Appreciate it.
I saw that coming.
You know, I like to sit in the background and I reserve, but thank you.
All right. Thanks for the nomination and for the honesty. Anyone any other nominations? Walter, did you have a nomination for vice chair? I see your hand.
Still up? My hand's still up?
Yes, sir, it is.
No, I did not. All right. I don't want to stay out of this, man.
Cynthia Rivera, go ahead.
Tish Calamer.
Tish Calamer. Tish, would you accept the nomination?
Yes, thank you, Cynthia.
All right, so I will add Tish's name, and then I saw Penelope Williams. Did you have a nomination?
Oh, no, I was removing my
hand.
Yeah, I realized it was already down.
Walter, did you have one?
My hand's still up?
Yes, sir.
I thought I lowered my hand.
We will, there you go. Very well. All right, so we have 5 nominees. Anyone else? Denise.
You know, that is such a wonderful slate of candidates. I am withdrawing my name.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks for letting us know.
Yeah.
Any other nominations? Okay. Candidates who were in the chair election, would it be okay if we forego an additional statement from you? Is that all right? So Kevin, Joshua, and Ishmael. So that would just leave Tish Calamer.
Thank you, everyone. I would just like to say that if voted upon, my role is to support the chair and to support this body to make sure that everybody is heard respectfully, kindly, compassionately, with the allotted time that everybody has, without compromising anybody and without shirking anybody's freedom of expression, and also to assist in making sure that the meetings run smoothly. I know this all sounds kind of run of the mill or boring, but it's necessary. And it's an honor to serve on this task force, and it would be an honor to serve as vice chair.
Thank you, Tish. So we will go back to the vote. We have, if I'm not mistaken, we have 4 nominees for vice chair, and I'll go in the sequence that they're displayed up on the screen. Same rules apply. Please either use a Zoom hand or a physical hand to let us know for whom you'd vote, and only choose one. The highest vote getter will be chosen. So first is Ishmael Cordova. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Thank you. We will turn next to, sorry, my screen here, Kevin Joshua. One, 2, 3, 4. Next would be Joshua Brockway. Two. And last but not least, Tish Calamer. One, 2, 3. Here's our vice chair, unless anyone objects, will be Ishmael Cordova. All right, home stretch. For the nomination for spokesperson, Kevin's got his hand up. Might be an old hand. All right, nominees, please, for spokesperson. Ishmael.
So I don't know if this is allowed, but I'd like to nominate 3 people if possible.
Okay.
That would be Cynthia, Aubrey, and Tish.
Okay, so let's ask them each if they would like to accept. Cynthia, would you like to accept the nomination?
Yes, I accept. Thank you, Ishmael.
Cynthia Rivera. Aubrey Flickema, would you like to accept it?
Yes, I'll accept. Thank you, Ishmael.
Okay. And is that Tish Calamer? Tish.
I accept.
Very
I accept.
well.
Thank you, Ishmael.
Very tough election here. Okay, Marcus's hand is up.
I'd like to nominate Pastor Walter Blaylark.
Pastor Blaylark, do you accept the nomination? Uh-oh, can't hear you, sir.
Yes, I will.
All right.
I would say nothing but the truth, and so help me God.
Normally I don't use titles, but Pastor, that's.
And I appreciate you.
Denise and then LaJewel.
I'd like to nominate Corey Battles.
Corey, do you accept the nomination?
Come on, Corey.
Please, thank you, but you know I like to sit in the back. You know I would not.
But you have a lot to say, and you say things with wisdom.
I really appreciate
it. All right.
Well, I won't put any pressure on you.
Very kind on both sides. Very good to be transparent and kind to nominate. LaJewel?
I actually put up Joshua again.
Okay.
Yeah.
Joshua, do you accept the nomination?
Sure, I appreciate that.
Okay. And Joshua, I heard you refer to a clergy position. If you are Reverend Brockway, I'm happy to note that. All right. Marcus, was there another nomination you wanted to make, or was it an old hand? I assume that's an old hand. All right. Joshua and Tish, would it be okay if we forego any further statement from you? So why don't we turn then to Cynthia, Aubrey, and then Walter. Cynthia?
Hello, thank you for the nomination. I I'm fairly new to this task force and many of the names here. I do enjoy getting to know all of you. I believe that it's important to have your hand on the pulse and the heartbeat of the community. It's so important to hear, like everyone else said, everyone's opinion and make sure people feel heard, and that we can do it objectively. I have an education background, but I also have a legal background. I'm actually a legal assistant and paralegal, so I use that lens to kind of look at both sides of situations, the legality, but also the heart of the situation. So I would be honored to be your spokesperson, and I have so much confidence in the others as well, so I know that you all make the right choice. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think I said Aubrey next.
Yeah, thank you. I am also a new name to this task force for many. I also have a background in education, a lot of educators here, so that's pretty cool. And in the role that I serve at the university I work at, I frequently speak on behalf of others as a spokesperson. So I have experience in it. And speaking to why this would be something that I would like to do, I just like to speak to why it's an honor to be on this task force in general, which is I care a lot about our community. I care about Elgin. I care about my neighbors, and I believe that my charge is to love my neighbors well, and I believe that doing that, I believe that this task force is a great way to do that in ensuring that all members of our community feel safe and heard, and I hope that I would be able to represent all members of this task force well. And it would be an honor to serve these great people, just serving on this task force and to be able to, just serve in that way. So I would be really honored.
Thank you so much, Aubrey. And that leaves Walter.
Thank you, Marcus, for nominating me. I appreciate it. Some of you all may not know, but I have extensive background. I used to be the director of the Human Relations Commission. And one of my tasks for the Human Relations Commission was to be the spokesperson for the commission and also for the city of Elgin, dealing with anything dealing with fostering better human relations, and also had to be able to deal with at that time 11 members of the commission, and bringing their consensus together and speaking to and on their particular behalf, along with juggling some of the things that the city manager wanted me to do or to say. So I had to kind of play both end of the middle and make sure that I was representing both part as being a city employee and also being a person that was a part of a community task force or a human relations at that particular time. So I'm kind of know what is going on in that particular in those particular position as being a spokesperson. Also, for some of the people who may not know, I'm also the administrative assistant of 180 churches throughout the Chicagoland area. And when there become a crisis, I'm the crisis intervention person who have to go and deal with many of the crises of those particular churches in the northern Illinois for the Church of God in Christ. I have an extensive background, and so I could go on, but I won't because it'll be too much time. And also in the city, we have dealt with a lot of issues of racial conflict and solving those particular issues. I first started off as in Elgin High. Some of you all who may have been living there long enough, in 1972 was the first racial disturbance in Elgin High. I was the chairperson of the student human relations body. So I'm well familiar with being a spokesperson. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Walter. What a great slate there, as we've had for all the positions. So we will do as we've done. We'll cast one vote amongst the five, and there are 5 nominees total. So we will begin with votes for Cynthia Rivera. One, 2, 3, 4. I counted 4 for Cynthia. We go next to, I'm sorry, Tish, was that I saw your hand there. Oh, okay, we got it. 4 total. For Aubrey Flickema. 1, 2. For Tish Calamer. 4 Walter Blaylark. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay. And for Joshua Brockway. I'm not sure if Walter and Penelope were voting for Walter or for. Okay, I've got 2 hands, I believe, for Joshua. Pastor Blaylark, Walter is our spokesperson. All right, folks, if it's okay, I'm going to suggest a short break before we get into our matter of substance. So if it's okay, we'll break until 7:25. Let's resume in about 1 minute, folks, if you can make your way back. Going to be handing things to my colleague Joe Horace here in just a moment. Just want to kind of touch upon one process matter, which is last week, 2 weeks ago, we ended up adjourning at around 8:15. 2 hours is a long time to meet on such an important topic. At the same time, I think that we may need a little bit more than the 30 or 35 minutes left in this hour to get through our conversation about accountability, especially if we try to give everyone a chance to at least share something. So just want to see if folks can indicate whether they can stay a little bit past 8 o'clock tonight, or whether 8 o'clock is a hard stop so that we can plan accordingly. So is 8 o'clock a hard stop? Can anybody tell me? Cynthia's raising her hand. Anybody else? Shimon, also a hard stop? Okay. We will certainly do all we can to finish by 8 o'clock. Just wanted to check in on that. All right, for this section of the meeting, I'm going to hand things to Joe Horth.
Thanks, Larry. And we'll definitely try to respect people's hard stops, their time concerns. I'm just really excited that we're at this point in the process. We can really start to jump into an issue now, and have the substantive kind of conversations that I think were part of what motivated everyone to be a part of this task force. So at the last meeting, we had moved towards accountability being the first topic we were going to take on. And we wanted to use this time to have a discussion that started to frame the various perspectives that are on the task force related to this issue, as well as from our perspective as the facilitators here, what information you all are interested in gathering or learning or hearing about related to this issue that would support, undergird, and allow you to have an informed dialogue on this topic. So the first question I wanted to throw out there for the discussion is, what does accountability mean to this task force? We already heard earlier in the discussion a nudge, a shift, direction, a little bit of direction or perspective on an existing conversation that's been ongoing in the community related to this issue around a citizens review board. And so wanted to pick up that thread. Larry, I think Larry, you were parking lotted it or kicked it along to this point in the process. So I wanted to open up with that. What does accountability mean to folks on this task force?
Joe, are you asking us to speak?
Yes, I'm throwing that out as a topic of discussion. I think this is a point in our meeting where we would like to hear from you all on your perspectives on what this topic means to you, so that we can do our work to help shape your conversations and your review of policies.
You know, when I think about accountability as being a person of color, I would like to see the police act professionally with everyone, in the sense of this: when they're being arrested, stopped, traffic stop, anything, that professional, and that if in fact that if someone asks a police officer, you know, why I'm being stopped, that I mean, sir, why I'm being stopped. If they're acting nice, and you know that the police continue to keep his posture and don't think that someone should not ask him or her that question. So I think accountability is, you know, beginning of, you know, to see a police officer just act professionally to everyone across the board, and not saying that they don't do that, but I've seen so many instances that doesn't happen, and I would like to see that. I think that if in fact, and so I guess that would go with training too. I think we need to see exactly how a police officer is trained on a stop or given stop. And I think somebody said, I think it was Tish said that it, you know, go both ways. I know that as being African American, that you know, my mother have given me the talk. I've given my children the talk, and the talk is that, you know, you act, you make sure that when a police stop you, make sure that you act in a proper manner. Do not act hostile. Keep your hands on the wheel if you're driving, if you're walking. So those are the kind of things that, you know, what kind of talk is police having about some of the fears of people of color?
Thank you, Walter, for that perspective. Anyone else want to jump in as well and add to that?
Joe, I think you have a couple of hands, Carol and Marcus.
Oh, I see. Yep, Carol. Or I'm not sure whose hand was first. Thank you, Larry, but go ahead, Carol.
Hi. Whenever I hear a term, the specific term police power, for example, such and such happened and the police power was taken away, we give them that power. Who is accountable? Who are they accountable to then? They are accountable to me. It unnerves me when I hear the term police power. So for me, I need to understand the process of how the police are trained and the process that they go through on all the things we have on our list. If I don't know how they're doing it now, how can I suggest an improvement? So there's my take on it for right now.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Carol. Marcus?
Like Carol said, that police are supposed to be accountable to us, the people. Our society has gotten everything upside down, where law enforcement holds the citizens accountable, yet there's no power to the people to hold law enforcement accountable. All of the laws that are put into place are to protect them from accountability. So then there's this culture of we do and move how we want. We don't have to answer to you. We don't have to respect you. We don't have to do any of that. I'm going to share a story with you to help you understand the culture. Back, this was under Chief Womack, and I'm sure some of the council members were on the council. I'm not sure if Kozo, I think Sean was the city manager at the time. We presented to them, the police scanners used to be public. So they used to be recorded by some people here in the city. And we brought to their attention where officers are openly targeting, profiling a Black and a Latino walking down the street. You can hear them on the radio saying, check these guys out, look at these guys, let's watch them. Then it says, okay, oh, they just jaywalk, let's get them. So then they go in like as if these guys just committed a murder, right? Shake them up, go through their pockets. They find a joint in their pocket, so they arrest them for that. And then after they arrest them for that, you can hear the officer at the end telling them, hey, make sure you put on there that the initial stop was for jaywalking, right? To validate that they found the weed. And this was openly done. So they openly profiled them. They openly waited for them to do something like jaywalk, right? which this shows the culture of law enforcement when they're out on the prowl, especially within Black and brown neighborhoods, to see if you're going to jaywalk, see if you're going to spit on the ground or something of that nature, so that it gives them an excuse to force an engagement with you to see if they can get some other greater arrest, right? So with the culture of law enforcement, instead of addressing that and say, hey, you guys can't profile them or hold them accountable for their profiling, what did our city do? Our city encrypted the police scanner so we can't hear anything anymore. So that's the nature, that's the culture of law enforcement when it comes to accountability. Is hold everybody else accountable except us. And that's what needs to be addressed. And that's why I've always personally pushed for a citizens review authority that actually has power and oversight to investigate, to subpoena, and ultimately be the binding arbitrators. Because see, we should have the last say in who polices our neighborhood, not somebody who has no skin in the game and no investment in our city.
Thank you, Marcus. Ishmael, I see your hand raised.
I think when we talk about accountability, the concept of accountability is really correlating to the concept of an entity and a person is always open to not doing good, or to doing something in disregard to the people around them. I think that as individuals, we have our own personal responsibility that is applicable as we see our police officers as well. When we think about police accountability, it's not necessarily just procedural accountability. I think that there's also a moral accountability and there's a social accountability to our police officers. Procedural can be easy, like, do they turn on their body camera on time when they got straight onto an incident they were called into? Do they call translation services in an appropriate amount of time when they couldn't translate themselves? Things like that. Do they shoot the gun too early? Those are all procedural accountability that we can look into. There is social accountability. How are they behaving outside of their role as a police officer? How is that projecting back onto the police department? And that's something that we can always look at. For example, social accountability. That there was a large portion of police officers throughout the nation that were tied onto white supremacy groups through social media. Although that doesn't necessarily violate any procedural regulations for a lot of police departments, that's a social norm that we probably wouldn't want to break, right? We wouldn't want to enhance white supremacy in our communities that are predominantly people of color. And there's also a moral code and moral accountability that we hold. We can also take consideration how does the police department handle whistleblowers? And a police officer sees another police officer, sees a member of their leadership committing something that breaks that social or procedural accountability, and how are they treated? How are they protected? One thing that I would really like to see is the last 12 months of police officers that were let go from the police department. You can redact the names, but we want to see why were they let go? What rule, what social, procedural, or moral accountability did they violate for them to be removed? And how did the police department learn and adapt their procedures and their accountability measures to forego that incident happening again?
Thank you, Ishmael. So appreciate the specific piece of information that helps add understanding to your perspective as well. So we're noting that. We also have.
Yes? Denise has her hand up too. So.
I'm sorry, Denise. I see your hand now.
Okay, thank you. I want to go back to the Citizens Review Board. As I stated earlier in this meeting, I know that some of the folks on this task force have been working on that. I would love to see and have a presentation on where that is to date for the whole group. And what went behind the work and all of that all of those kinds of things.
Was that, tell me more about that process and kind of how it was coming together and
So if I may, I'm going to call on my friend Corey Battles, because I know that he has been instrumental in working in that area, and he can speak to it much better than I can.
So as far as the board, I've been working with the board for a little over 2 years. And yes, it has came together. We have, we dealt with the policies and the issues at hand, but it's a lot of work still, that's going on. So to be honest with you, I can speak to it, but personally, I think Chief Lally can speak a lot more to the issue at hand. So I'm passing it on to you, Chief. Is she still here?
Chief
Yes.
Riley's still there.
Okay.
Yes,
Give her a
hello,
moment
hi.
oh, there she is.
Yep.
Go ahead, Chief.
Okay. Yes, thank you, Corey. So I think what Corey is mentioning is that he's been part of a group that the police department has put together. We call it our Next Steps group, and it's been in place for about 2.5 years. And that group brought community members, faith-based organizations in the room with police officers, having some really difficult conversations, but to gain perspective on things that had occurred and things that we want to change and do together. And that work and that group, I meet with faith-based, that group along with Corey. We meet every couple of months, and during that time we really work through a lot of the policies, procedures, going through some of the training and things that we do. Second to that, as far as a citizen review board, so Councilwoman Powell and Councilman Dixon, and this again has been in the works for probably about 2.5 years, but the conversation actually started, I would say maybe 4 or 5 years ago. But really, and that was through, we used to have a group of community members, which Denise was actually part of. And that conversation always came up, but in the past, probably 2.5 years, with Councilman Dixon, Councilman Powell, working with our legal department, working with the city manager, and really kind of trying to put something together based on conversations that had occurred for many, many years. And so Councilwoman Powell and Dixon came forward. They wanted to kind of start that conversation again. Working through the type of review boards, working through some, policies, procedures, the legal aspect. So we met several times with Corporation Counsel Bill Cogley, with Rick Kozel, with the city manager, with our community engagement specialist, Bob Witt. And so we have some framework that we discussed, but then this task force and the creation of it came in place at the city council meeting. So it's obviously a nexus to, that would be a topic of conversation for this group. So there is some preliminary work that's been done in conversations, and Councilwoman Powell would probably be best to provide that, on from her perspective, or Councilman Dixon if he wants to, maybe be a guest one day. But that's kind of the core of it. That there have been conversations. It's been going for 5-6 years. We really started to have more conversations with substance about 2.5 years ago. We paused because this group formed. And so we wanted to respect the process that would obviously be a topic of conversation. So I think, Corey, does that cover what you want? Does that?
Yes,
cover
yes, and a quick question. How can we get some of the information that we've been working on, such as the policies? How can we get that to this group? Because I think the more, for them to see it, I think it'd be beneficial.
Yeah, I can, what I can do is all our policies, and I think this is something that, however we need to do this, the Elgin Police Department has a transparency site, and there's a lot of information on there. I just did a presentation at City Council, I want to say 2 weeks ago, and I gave a really high level review of what's on there. Our use of force stats are on there. Our internal information is on there. Our policies are on there, and they're published for the public. So that would be the, I think I can send the link to the group. And then from there, people can kind of explore themselves and see, how much you want us to go further. But as Corey mentioned, there's a lot of work that's been done on policies, and the group that, that we met with several years ago, we really did a lot of conversations and hearing their input and hearing, what the community was saying and hearing some of the concerns. And, some of those things are in our policies, and some of them, I think, is a reflection of those conversations that I had with many community members over the past 2.5, 3 years. So I can send the link. I'll direct you guys to where the policies are, take a look, and then I guess we can take it from there depending on what the task force wants to see.
So Chief Lally, just to be clear, and Corey, whoever else may have been involved, it sounds like that group explicitly paused to see if this task force would take up this issue.
Correct. Yes. But there's been a lot of work done, and Councilwoman Powell is probably the best to speak on it, maybe at the next meeting. But we were very mindful to know that. And again, like I said, that conversation had been going on for 5-6 years, but really the substance in the past couple of years.
Well, then I wonder, it definitely sounds worthwhile to learn to help provide enough information on what's been done before and sort of where that group has gotten to everyone on the task force, so they all can have that same starting point. And just wanted to, I think the link is a good starting point. Just wanted to throw out there if anyone had any other ideas on how we can bring everybody up to the same level of understanding of where that group has gotten, and then pick up the baton from there. If anyone has any suggestions on that. And I noted that 2 hands were already up, Marcus and then Walter.
Yeah, so I believe also that the city council already has some framework that they haven't shared with the public. If we can get a hold of the framework that they have, what they've started on, what they've been meeting on and discussing, that would also help us to see what direction that the council has been going on.
Joe, just flagging Cynthia Rivera's hand also.
There it is. Sorry, Cynthia, go ahead.
I just want to say I really appreciate the different perspectives that are offered, even if things that happened under past leadership. It's important for us to know, and things that we were not aware of. I also like that about the moral accountability. I just want to take a more objective view of the whole process of accountability so we could see both sides. I mentioned it in our last meeting. I'm interested in what's happening on the front end before someone might have contact with the police, or I noted some of the things that took place over the summer, like to build the family structure. There's some things that I've seen where police have gone above and beyond with some places some kids.
Cynthia, we lost your sound.
You went on mute, Cynthia.
Sorry about that. Like programs that took place over the summer for kids to go and at the different middle schools, because during the pandemic, everyone was home, so it gave them a nice outlet. I also mentioned last time about the elder abuse and spam prevention programs that the police offered. There was a recent video that came out. It was the Collaborative Crisis Service Unit. Things like that, I like to see what's already in place. Like we mentioned, the different structures and that's already out there. That means a lot to me as a community member to see what's happening on the front end, kind of like the offense before someone has, contact with the police, or someone who may never have contact with the police. To me, it builds a stronger community engagement, and it helps with that family structure, because sometimes mom and dad are not at home, or the kids are left alone and they're of age legally, they could be left alone, but it gives them something else to do. Different programs, social services. The library has one coming up soon. And Friday with the Fuzz, I like listening to that. Sometimes I pop in to hear what's going on. So and I love the guest speakers that they have on there. It gives different community members a voice, and you could see them working together with the police. And to me, that helps me understand how things function more. But it is also important for us to see like the body cams or videos, or like I said, under different leadership, things may have happened that were terrible. And that's important for us to know also. I like the transparency site. I would definitely love more information about that. And yes, I just want to just keep an objective view of the whole thing and see both sides to have a valuable input.
Yes, that's thank you, Cynthia. That's important as well. Marcus had his hand up from a previous time up, but also I noticed that Councilmember Shaw, it looked like you were about to speak at some point. So I know people have gone into the practice of raising their hands. And I'm not going to step out of the flow that we have, but I wanted to acknowledge that. I'm not sure when you were trying to speak and when Walter had his hand up, but Walter was next. So Councilmember Shaw, I'll go to you after Walter. Just want to acknowledge that.
Joe, mine's gonna be very short.
Okay.
I really want to appreciate Corey and Chief. They're absolutely right. We need that information. If they can give us that information and the link, that would be great. And then I want to just piggyback on what Marcus said. And if the council have things that they was looking at on that particular issue of citizen review, please I hope that they would share that with us. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Shaw and then Joshua.
Yeah, just to respond to the request or the kind of how the council members work and things like that. In this situation, it was really Councilwoman Powell and Councilman Dixon who were working on this with staff and with a number of other community members on this. It never got to the point where it was flushed out enough to release to the full council. So I have not seen the work that they've done. I've gotten just some brief updates kind of sporadically from my one-on-ones with the city manager. But I think if we could wait till the next meeting, I think Councilwoman Powell can definitely provide us an update. And I think if we probably reach out offline, we can kind of prep her for kind of being able to kind of maybe give us an overview of where that was at. That may even want to be a subcommittee in and of itself. I'm not sure how we want to handle that.
And just wanted to let the task force know that Councilmember Powell apologized. She had a meeting that started at 7:30 and had to leave early tonight.
I think Councilmember Shaw, that's one of the goals of this discussion is to hear from you all what we can compile or prepare for the next meeting to help sort of springboard the review that you all will be doing on this issue. Go ahead, Task Force Member Brockway, Joshua.
Yeah, I just want to echo one thing in there is to say that I don't want to lose the momentum of that working group or the group that's done that. I don't want to see that go into pause while we try to do something else and not work in harmony with what was already in process. I think getting that information, even if it's not a documented policy and procedures yet, but to see the framework is important. The one piece that's hard in accountability is, this is my second point. We can talk about policy and procedures as kind of one document, right? That we're accountable to those things, and those are the transparent accountabilities. There's a third kind of amorphous category of things that goes on when we talk about policing and other things, and that's the best practices language, right? And all of us have that best practice language in our fields in some shape or form, and depending on who you talk to or which organization you talk to, they have a different set of best practices. So I'd like to hear particularly or see information about how the department, the city manager, understand and determine what those best practices are. I'd like to, that's a kind of piece that, well, it can fit to this category, but it's not necessarily published. It's could be argumentative, have different opinions in a variety of sectors. And so I think understanding how our police force and city manage those questions of best practices is another key piece of information we need.
Thank you, Joshua. I'm noting that it's 7:54, and there's some folks who haven't spoken yet, and so I want to just invite them to, share an opinion, raise a question, share their thoughts, even if you're digesting, think aloud with us. Just invite folks in to participate, anyone who hasn't spoken yet. Jewel, I see your hand raised. Oh, and
Yeah.
Shimon, sorry, Shimon.
Go ahead.
It looks like he was first. Go ahead, Shimon.
All right. No, I was just going to speak to the accountability piece. For me, accountability is to ensure the proper procedures and things that are in place are followed, and then there should be consequences if they're not. And I think the consequences should match the violations that are committed.
So you're saying it would be important to understand what the consequences are of a particular disciplinary action, like what
Correct.
what the punishment would be, basically. Okay.
Correct.
Gotcha. LaJewel.
Actually, Shimon pretty much took what I wanted to say. That I'm totally in agreement with what he is saying, and basically what everybody has said. I think we need to see those things to get a better picture of what we're actually looking at. And, exactly, of course, we know or we'll see what the policy is, but how they're actually operating. We need to see that information. And I think that's where, we're able to really take and do the true work and make that judgment, if you want to say judgment, or give that assessment of what we think, where there needs to be change or correction. So that's just my thought.
Thanks, LaJewel. Karen?
Hi, thank you. So in terms, I'm going to step back into accountability. To me, it's acknowledgement in the first place. So society in itself is moving forward in terms of like innate bias. We all have innate bias, implicit bias, or just confirmation bias. All of these societal structures, happenings that the police maybe not is on the same page at the time right now. So to me, that's step one, is acknowledgement of the history of policing and where we are as a society, where the rest of society is moving forward, and seeing that as a parallel in the police department would be obviously great. That taking place in training and policy and moving forward would be also fantastic. So just want to touch base on acknowledgement as a first step for accountability, and then policy forward after that.
Thank you, Karen. Marcus, and then Aubrey.
So let me say, over the past couple of years, our department has made great strides moving in the right direction. I find myself in a position where I get tagged as this anti-police guy, but those who know me know different. The problem is I have to say what's not being said, right? Our police department, yes, they're doing a lot of great things, right? There's a lot of unseen things that aren't being addressed. And those are where the problems are. I'll give you another prime example about our own city right here, and you can Google it and do you some research. We had an officer named Christopher Dar. This is some years ago. Anyway, his father used to be an Elgin police officer, retired, and worked security at a hotel in Elgin. Fight broke out. His father got beat up. Somehow, somebody called Officer Dar, who was off duty, came to the scene and started beating people in the back of the police cars. Now, the only person where he was held accountable later on down the road, but it's because one of the people that he beat up was a white guy whose family had some money to hire an attorney to prosecute. Now, there's a handful of black guys who got beat up that night too, which nobody ever heard of, right? So Officer Dar eventually, they allowed him to resign, right? So here's the accountability factor. They allowed him to resign instead of firing him for what he did. So it won't go on his record, right? As far as being fired from a department. And he was charged. Now, the problem is he was held semi-accountable, but what about the other officers who were on the scene who allowed them to go into the back of their vehicles and beat people, right? Once you place handcuffs on somebody, you are now accountable for those individuals and their well-being. Our city did not hold any of those officers accountable. So we can't get distracted by what is shown. Well, we followed these policies, we followed these procedures, we held this person accountable. It's the things that aren't being done, the things and the people who aren't being held accountable.
Thanks, Marcus. We'll have Aubrey be our last comment on this thread, and then Larry will wrap us up.
Yeah, I think just echoing some of what's been said, I think that when it comes to accountability, the foundation of accountability is good policy, it's good procedures, it's good community practices, it's everything that we've talked about here. But and some of this has been stated, right? It's, there's best practices. I think I'm interested in hearing what happens when someone steps outside of those best practices, that steps outside of those procedures, outside of those policies. And, what happens there? How are those people held accountable? And how is that stated to the community that's being served by those people in a way that is appropriate? And obviously we want to be respectful of everybody's, personal privacy there, but how is the community hearing that's happening? And I opened the transparency website just now. I did a quick Google search and was able to review that. I think it's great. But as I've lived in Elgin for, better part of a decade now, and this is the first time I've heard about that. So I think good transparency, good policy, how is that clearly stated? And how are we stating what happens in the in-betweens? How are we letting our community members know when those best practices are not being followed? And so that's data that I would be interested in getting is, what are some of those accountability measures? How does that process get initiated? And then even how that's reported out on would be something that would be important for me to hear.
So Kevin, I see you have your hand up, and we're just about to wrap up. So I'll call on you, but maybe you could make it brief if possible.
Yeah, it'll be brief. I think just to get my perspective of accountability and real quickly, I think accountability also is about the structure and the purpose of police in our society. So a lot of the things that I'm doing is looking at like the results of what it looks like to increase the budget of the police department. I sincerely believe that if we are giving money to the police department and it's increasing every year and the results of a society are still the same, if not worse, such as some of the crime has evolved into domestic abuse cases, it's transformed, I think accountability also means defunding what we see is necessary. And so it's just how it's holding accountable how the police use the resources in our society and seeing if the results that we are investing in are the results that we are expecting and wanting.
Thank you, Kevin, for that. And Larry, I'm going to turn it over to you to talk about how what might happen in the next meeting based off of everything we've heard today.
I'm pausing, first of all, to thank Joe for great facilitation there and Norma earlier in the night. And there's an unsung hero in all of this that you all may not know very much about. You might have heard from her once, but the person who has been capturing all this information is named Sheila Brown. And she probably has the most important job of all of us because she has taken this robust discussion and put it to paper. And that way we will be able to track all of the things that came up during this important conversation. So acknowledging Sheila for the great work, which I can see. I'm not just saying that, I can actually see the notes. So thank you for that. One thing that I think will be very useful at our next meeting, based on what I've heard tonight, is for Councilwoman Powell, in conjunction with Chief Lally, maybe Corey Battles, and anyone else who's been involved in that citizens review conversation, to provide us kind of a little bit of an overview as to where that conversation started and where it landed, and then perhaps where the task force could pick it up from there. I also think we had a number of requests for information that I heard individual task force members make. And so I think it's incumbent upon the facilitation team to take a full inventory and then work with both the chief, the city manager, and others to determine the best way to bring that information to you. Given that we have you all for 4 hours a month at this point, 2 hours every couple of weeks, I think we'll try to do our best, use our best judgment to decide when it's best for something to be discussed in the meeting as compared to when it can be shared with you in writing. I think a lot of what we heard you all ask for tonight needs to be discussed in the meeting. And this is certainly not an attempt to shield any information from anyone, but we do want to make sure that we make highest and best use of our time together for discussion and deliberation and the like. So that's what the facilitation team will tackle in the next few days is just the best way to use the time to get at the questions that you all have. And in full transparency, it may take at least 2 more meetings to get to a place where we feel like we've dealt with all of the things that this group wants to deal with on this topic. Just in reference to process, our goal is to send you all summaries of your meetings as quickly as possible after they end. So it won't be the official minutes, but we're hoping that we can turn around a summary to you relatively quickly. And then we hope to have agendas to you for your meetings about a week in advance so that you can give us any feedback on them and that we can revise them accordingly. We'll also try to meet with Chair Krigler, Vice Chair Cordova, and Spokesperson Blaylark in the next few days to determine best steps for us to take with them. And I see Denise's hand. Real quickly, Denise, if you could.
I had 2 things I wanted to propose to the group. One is would it be possible to meet more frequently than every other week? This is something to ponder because we do have a lot of work. We are a talkative group. We're very passionate, and there are so many things to do. So I want to throw it out to the group to think on. That if we could meet every week or more frequently than what we have set up. That's one. And the second is I want to put a call out there. Can we meet in person soon? Maybe our next meeting.
Well, both suggestions are appreciated. I think that part of the equation as it relates to in-person obviously relates to the pandemic, and we certainly are cognizant of both the benefits of meeting in person and the need to attend to public health and safety. There's also just the logistics of our team getting to Elgin. So all of that is to say that we will certainly be open to the task force desires there. I think it would be very difficult for us to be in person a week from today, if not impossible. So I apologize if that's a disappointment, but that's just the reality of the way that the facilitation team is set up. I beg your pardon?
Can we table it for a vote?
Yes. Did you mean table it to vote now, or did you mean to take a vote at a subsequent meeting?
Yeah, take a vote today about meeting in person so that we can get to it.
Okay.
Today.
Yep.
You may. That's certainly possible. I see Kevin's hand. I didn't know if he wanted to speak to this or not.
I just had a question. I just had a question regarding. I know that we can't have discussions like that around, via email. But is it okay to send information to each other, like studies, statistic, facts, stuff like that as well? Or
the way to do it in compliance with open meetings will be either to send it to myself, Norma, or Joe, or once the box link is available to you, you can just simply upload it directly. And then once we see it upload, we can notify the group. So there's no issue with our sending something to the entire group. And so you can send it to us, and there's no filter there. I mean, as long as it's related to your scope, we'll distribute it. I see 3 hands, so I'm very cognizant that we're already past 8 o'clock, and I've already been asked to have a vote on something. So Carol, briefly, and then Ishmael.
If we meet in person, it has to have an elevator. I'm not doing any more stairs. That's it.
All right. Thank you for letting us know.
Oh, yeah.
Ishmael.
I would recommend that we table that conversation for our next meeting, only just so we can all kind of come into the next meeting knowing like kind of where we fall in our own respective calendars. And I know that we lost 2 people because of the time limit. So we want to let everybody have the opportunity to kind of look at the calendars, kind of look at how, if that's even available, because I know sometimes if we do go to in person, some people might need childcare, so we would take that into consideration as well. So I would recommend just waiting for the next meeting, but having it on the agenda for a point of discussion.
Good idea.
And
okay, so we have a couple of different points of view here. So Marcus, I want to turn back to you. Would it be okay with you if we waited to make a decision on this matter until we have the entire task force present and their opportunities to review calendars? Would that satisfy you?
Well, I think with in person, there's still the availability for the Zoom as well. So I don't see why we have to put something off. We can make a decision. Those who want to come. And those who want to stay on Zoom will stay on Zoom. We had a discussion last time.
Oh, that's easy.
Well, I appreciate that, and it's important that I say to you that we can accommodate and facilitate hybrid meetings, but there is a good bit of logistics involved there, and it's important that we have enough time as your facilitation team to coordinate all of those logistics. So I would say to you, without trying to pour cold water on anyone's idea, that I don't see us being able to facilitate a meeting in person next Thursday. If we were to,
I wasn't saying for next Thursday. I'm just saying as far as making the vote that we want to do that, so that
I see.
Yes.
Okay. Well, as it relates to the body here, I mean, there are 3, 5, 7, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 of you still, 15, excuse me, still in the meeting. So, I mean, that's certainly the vast majority of the task force is still here. Let me ask this way: does anyone feel strongly opposed or have significant concerns about having a meeting take place in person, or at least to have the option for people to meet in person? Is there anyone with any strong objection or concern about that? Okay, so what I'm gleaning from that, and Marcus, I don't mean to undermine the desire for a vote, but I sense that folks are comfortable with the idea of working towards in-person meetings. And what I would ask is that the facilitation team be given the time to work with the chair, vice chair, and spokesperson and the city staff to determine a potential timeline for that to take place. I got a thumbs up from Marcus. Does that sound okay to everybody else? Okay, I apologize that this is more complex. The four of us unfortunately don't live locally, so there's just a lot that needs to be coordinated there, and obviously we want to do it in the safest possible fashion. I don't think that was directed to me. So I want to give everybody the rest of their evening, and so while I thanked our team, I also want to thank you all. This was a fantastic meeting. It's okay if I'm not biased when I say that, I think. I want to congratulate LaJewel, Ishmael, and Walter on being selected by their peers as chair, vice chair, and spokesperson. And just for transparency, our team will reach out to the three of them to coordinate a time for us to talk and get coordinated. As of right now, I would encourage everyone to plan for our next meeting to be 2 weeks from tonight. So again, November the 4th at 6 o'clock. Again, November the 4th at 6 o'clock, sticking to that first and third Thursday. And as I say, the team will work as hard as we can to figure out the best way to facilitate in-person engagement as best we can. We will continue the accountability conversation with information in response to your inquiries, as well as information about the civilian review board process that's been initiated by others, including Councilmember Powell. Team, am I missing anything before we drop for the evening?
I was just going to say it's actually Thursday, November 4th.
Oh, what did I say? 8th?
I think you said.
Did I misspeak?
Maybe
Okay.
it's 4th. I thought it was 3rd, but November.
That's okay.
4th.
Thursday, November 4th is the correct date at 6 o'clock. All right. With